Good evening, everyone. This is Professor Hill. This is a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics Philosophy 2306, here at St. Philip's College for Maymester 2022. Today is indeed Monday, Memorial Day, the 30th of May, 2022. It's a day that we set aside to remember people who have fallen, died in the service of our country. So it's a little different than Veterans Day, which is to honor everyone who served. Memorial Day is reserved for commemorating those who gave the ultimate sacrifice and died for our country. So today is also Monday, and even though it's a holiday, it marks the beginning of the last week of our class. So I am going to do a short video for today, even though I'm doing it from home because we're closed today. But it turns out that when we come back tomorrow, we're going to be looking at a really short couple of quick days, because it goes like this. Tuesday, we reopen. Wednesday, the last essay is due. We're going to talk about that a little bit because we're going to go back to medical ethics for our final essay. That's Wednesday, June 1st is the final essay that's due. But then we also, the next day, Thursday, is the final exam. Because, again, that's the end of the week. We're closed on Friday, meaning it's a short week. We only are open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And of those 3 days, the final essay is due Wednesday and the final exam is due Thursday. So we're going to be wrapping it up. So we want to make sure that we've read our chapters, our work in the textbook, Doing Ethics by Lewis Vaughn. We want to make sure that we had a chance to really think about a very complicated medical ethics case, one that some people are familiar with because of the book and the movie that was based on this actual case. That, like I said, will be Wednesday. And then Thursday, the final exam, I just want to point out really fast, I've had a couple of people ask me about this. You'll see on the final exam, which is marked the 3rd, pay no attention to that. I mean, it's supposed to be June the 2nd, Thursday. But there's 3 questions at the end. The essay, you can choose from one of 3 case studies, 2 of which you've seen before. And here's the thing. You only write one essay, and if you've written about it as one of the 2 cases we've already had, just recycle it, get it back, treat it like a first draft, and say, look, pull it up, clean it up, edit it, spell check it, and then treat it like a final draft for the final exam. That's the way to think about this. So hopefully you'll have a chance to have now thought about it a little bit more deeply in the light of the other chapters, and you can expand your thinking on it. So that's it's a little bit about the final the essays in the final exam, which are due on Thursday, the 2nd of June. So, like I said, it's going to be a short dash to the finish line. And this week, we are looking at this actual case, which is actually discussed in the textbook. This is the one of Jack and Lisa Nash, their daughter Molly, and what they were faced with in terms of trying to decide what to do about the significant disabilities, birth defects that she was born with. And the controversial decision they made to create the very first savior sibling, which was the brother, Adam, appropriately named, who became the first child who was, and you got to think about it this way, who was envisioned, planned, literally conceived as a medical therapy for another person. That's saying a lot. Now, look, they did it because the doctor had told them that, hey, if you had a perfect match of another baby that didn't have Fanconi anemia, that was the big problem, the big disease they were trying to get around, because at the time there's just no cure for it. They were saying, look, we might be able to do a stem cell total bone marrow transplant. And if we were able to do that, it'd have to be a perfect match from a donor that didn't have the disease. And they're like, well, yeah, but that person doesn't exist. And they're like, aha, but we could create that person because this particular doctor had discovered a way to test for that in fertilized egg cells. That's the whole thing, which is they use existing technology designed to help couples that want to conceive a child. And they take sperm from Jack, the husband, eggs from Lisa, the wife, and they put them together, do in vitro fertilization, and create these fertilized egg cells. And what you can do then is test them for the two things they were looking for to make sure that there wasn't Fanconi anemia in this little tiny fertilized cell. And also that it was going to be a tissue match. So what you do is you create a bunch of these, screen for the ones you need, and then you get a handful of them. Because the way this works with the in vitro fertilization is when you do the implantation, because it's risky, because it doesn't always take hold, because there's a kind of a low success rate. What you do is you put in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You implant them because you know that some of them are not going to attach. They're not going to grow. If they do attach, there's always going to be kind of an attrition rate that you got to account for. And then if, 3 attach through the impregnation process, then, you're going to have triplets. If 2 do, you're going to have twins. And that's one of the things about the process. Since you're kind of trying to overbook to get at least one, sometimes you end up with, multiple births. That's a common feature of the process of in vitro fertilization to this point, because you have to kind of overdo that in order to get a successful candidate. And that was what was happening here. And this is a thing that disturbs some people about the process, which is because you got to decide right off the bat to even begin thinking about this case. You have to address the question of when does life begin? It's not really life because, again, we're talking about living human cells. That's not an issue. We're talking about when does personhood begin? Now, lots of people just take the approach, well, it begins at conception. As soon as you have an egg and a sperm and there's conception, their position is that's a human being. That's somebody with full rights and deserving of protections. You would obviously be against abortion because that would be the killing of a full human person, a human being. But there are other issues that come with that if we're going to be consistent about that. And we're going to circle back to that. But the point is that here, because the process, which involves testing some of the fertilized egg cells you've created, and if they don't meet the criteria, they get discarded and never even implanted. And then the others, they're implanted, but they're not going to survive. And in fact, in some cases, you're like, well, look, we implanted 6 or 7, 3 survived. And then the question becomes, well, did you want triplets? If not, we'll just select down to 2 and you can have twins. Or if not, you can just select down to 1. Like in this case, this is how they get Jack, who is indeed born healthy as a result of the process. And they're able to take the umbilical cord and remove from the umbilical cord stem cells, which were then able to use to help Molly. And it works. That's the thing about this case is it works and it saves Molly. Jack and Lisa are like, they're thrilled. They're like, this cured her Fanconi anemia. And we have a healthy baby son who we love. So it's like win-win all the way around. Now, thing about that is, it does raise lots of ethical issues, not least of which is the process which ends up creating and destroying fertilized egg cells, which are, again, on the other side of conception. So if you believe life at conception, then you believe that there's a huge human cost, a toll to this, which is why some groups are opposed to it based on that ground. The Roman Catholic Church, for example, is opposed to the entire concept because they say, no, personhood begins at conception. So this would be unacceptable. Jack and Lisa, like I said, are focused on their daughter, and this works, and they save her. So they're happy as clams. They're like, no, this worked. This is good for us. So you have the human personhood, when does it begin issue. You also have this other issue about, because one of the things which comes up in the course of this whole conversation is, why do people have children? What's a good reason to have kids and what's a bad reason? Are there bad reasons? Like I said at the beginning, is the creation of a human being as a medical therapy for another human being a good reason to create a person? Or is that a bad reason? But also, you get the specter raised of eugenics, and eugenics is the process of trying to manipulate human beings in terms of our reproduction to get certain characteristics, like in this case, a baby that's free of, Fanconi anemia, and it is a perfect tissue match for a sister who needs some help. That sounds like a good reason, but there are also lots of bad reasons. The human history around eugenics is terrible. It was something which was kind of, people were fascinated with once we developed the technology to do this. I mean, back in the 20s and 30s, when it became widespread. And we had eugenics committees in every state, and we had eugenic fairs with, the healthy family baby contests. But again, when a lot of this begins with scientists saying, look, we do this in animal husbandry all the time. We do manipulation of genetics to get the best, sheep, or to develop the best cow, because farmers are trying to maximize their herds. And so we help them with science, and it gets them larger, stronger, heavier cattle, which are, earns you more money at the market. And so, on the side of food production, when we use genetic engineering to manufacture wheat stalks that are strong enough to hold up larger heads of wheat and produce much greater quantity and feed more people, these things are heralded as incredible scientific breakthroughs, and they are. When you take that same technology, though, and apply it to human beings, and suddenly we're all standing around talking about, well, with the right genetic manipulation, we could have people who are taller. And you're like, well, is that really better? And you can see all of a sudden we're quickly into ethics. If we could genetically manipulate people to have blue eyes because that's a preference, is that better than somebody who has dark eyes, like my brown-eyed little baby? I'm like, I don't know if it's better. And in fact, this is where things went off the rail with Germany in the 30s and the Nazis and doing experiments. And it was we can create the master race. We can have tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and master race Aryans. It's like, whoa. If you're talking about curing disease, that's one thing. But suddenly we get these kind of dark impulses from people about, what's better or worse, what's good and bad in terms of characteristics of people. And it's like, well, I'm just saying our history is really bad on this. And so there have been efforts to ban eugenics, ban the cloning of human beings, for example, is another example of trying to monkey with the human genome. And it's tricky because we want to provide lots of resources to scientists that are doing genetic work, which is going to cure illness. Yay. But then suddenly you get into these other really complicated questions about, well, where should that line be drawn? And why are we trying to fix some things that maybe don't need to be fixed? That gets complicated really quickly. So let me just say that that's kicking around in the back of this case, because it is indeed the case where we have the creation of the first savior sibling. Now, I got to tell you, it's a common practice now. This happens every day in the United States. At the time, Jack and Lisa Nash, it was novel because it was the first time it was happening because the technology had just become available. That's why we also see a book in the movie, My Sister's Keeper, about this, that's based on this actual story, because it was new and novel and raised all kinds of interesting ethical questions. The book changed the situation. They wanted to make it a little bit more dramatic. So as opposed to just taking the stem cells from an umbilical cord with no pain or impact to Adam, the baby, and it works and saves Molly, the sister, in real life. In the book, it's more like there's these ongoing series of painful, surgeries that the savior sibling has to go through in order to not just save, but keep alive the older sibling. I get why they wanted to change it up and make it a little more dramatic, a little bit more painful, a little bit more on the edge. But there are serious, important issues that are brought up because of this case. So I do want you to think about those issues as you approach it. Read the stuff in the Doing Ethics book, but then I gave links to some videos, to some stories, to some fact sheets about the case, because it's, like I said, it's a well-known, widely discussed case, and I thought it would be a good one for us to end on. It kind of gets us back to medical ethics, but it gets also into these other complicated aspects of good and bad, right and wrong. And again, what is our thinking on this? Not just make a choice, but explain your thinking in terms of the frameworks we've been looking at. Are you a moral objectivist? Are you a cultural relativist? And what does that mean? So make sure that you cram all that into it. And again, in the essays, folks have been doing great. They've been very well done so far. Make sure you spend enough time to address all the issues. But folks they've figured this out. So it's been going very well. Like I said, it's a short class. We've been doing a lot of work in a short period of time, but so far it's going quite well. All right. All that being said, I'll give you another video tomorrow, and it's on Wednesday that essay is due. So keep an eye on the clock. Take care. Bye.